So I thought I'd share one of my stories I've written. This was, I think, fairly intuitive. It certainly started as just sitting down and telling a story onto camera. The problem with that is when I'm telling these stories onto camera, often they're a little bit vague. They're not completely formed, and often the sound quality is quite frankly atrocious. So what I tend to do is I will record them onto camera or audio. Um, that bit just kind of happens, and then put it away in a dark box. um, and then, as I'm doing at the moment, is go back to these stories and type them up and then try and retell them. They tend to be rather strange. They tend to be very much kind of fairy tales, and they just seem to appear. So I'm going to share these stories. Often they don't make any logical sense, and they're really like dreams. In fact, I think that's probably a really good description of my stories, is they are like dreams. In fact, they do tend to have dreams feature quite heavily in them. This one, not so much, but there's a lot of the night time. The moon is really prevalent. So I guess my little preamble would be to say that treat them a little bit like a dream. Listen, reflect, see if they bring something up for you, see if they bring up some kind of creativity, and listen to them as a child. Wonder. Wondering is good. So, yeah. So here are my little dreams, my little stories. This one is called The King Who Faced His Fear. Years ago there was born a baby boy, a prince, and as happens in fairy tale, he had a christening and he was given gifts. All magical gifts. Gifts of strength, of kindness, of good health and creativity. The second to last gift giver brought 3 pots. I give you the gift of facing your fear. Each pot was as dark as night. A hush went across the christening hall. The young prince reached out and started to play with the pots. A little giggle, his eyes sparkling. The final gift giver ran forward. I was going to give you something else, but I see I must help you and protect you from these terrible fears. She said a magical incantation, and the 3 pots disappeared, and in their place were 3 heavy metal keys. The prince saw the keys and shied away. I cannot destroy the fears, said the gift giver, but now they are beyond and behind lock and key. And as the crowd looked out of the window, they saw 3 great locked gates. The king stood up and ordered a guard to stand in front of each gate from dusk to dawn, so that the prince's fears might never escape. And so that was how it was, and the baby grew to be a child, and the child to be a man, and finally the prince became the king. And still he had guards guarding the 3 great locked gates from dusk to dawn, and so that his fears would never escape. There was once a king, and he lived in a great kingdom. The king was very rich and had servants to do everything for him. They washed and dried his clothes, they cooked for him, they tucked him up at night and ran all his errands. But the one thing which was very unusual, as you know and I know, was that the servants faced his fears for him. Behind each big locked gate was one of the king's fears. The first was a dark, dark garden. The second had thunder and lightning, and the third had spiders. For years the servants' tasks include cooking and cleaning and shopping and tucking up the king in bed and spending time with the king's fears so he would never have to. But one day a new guard arrived. She was new in town, and the king explained what she needed to do, and she was amused to hear about guarding the king's fears. She spoke to the other guards, and they explained the king was very fearful, and the only way he had found was to get others to look after his fears. The new guard was concerned and decided she would find a way to help the king. So on the first day, the guard was sent to the first great gate, the gate of darkness. The guard found herself in a garden. It was pitch black. In fact, it was a little scary. But the guard held her sword tightly and sang a special song. And as she sang it, she noticed it was not as dark as she thought. And as the clouds disappeared, the stars came out, and she realised she would never have seen the stars if it was not so dark. The second day she went to the next garden. In the garden lived the thunder and the lightning, and the ground seemed to shake with the thunder, and the lightning flashed. The guard held her sword tightly and sang her song. And as she sang, but also it was very beautiful, and sang the song, she realised she was not scared at all. The third day she went to the third great gate, and behind the gate in the garden lived the spiders and the insects. The servant, the guard, loved all creatures, but imagined how the king felt, looking all around. There was the sparkling spider's web of gossamer. The king heard the guard singing her special song and wondered why she sang. He listened and came to the first door. There was the guard. The servant explained that although it was dark, it was only dark so they could see the light. The next night, the king heard singing from the next gate. He entered, and there was the thunder, and there was the lightning. And the guard explained that the thunder and the lightning was there